All right. Ah, yes. Come in. Come in, please. File in. There's room for everybody here. Yes, yes. Keep coming in. Look at all these seats. Plenty of seats in here. Get seated. Get comfortable. Get relaxed. For we've got a story to tell. Welcome to whatever we're calling this for now. Last night I was in bed. Woke up. Couldn't really sleep that much after. Got the idea in my head to work on this a little bit today. So, working name, working title. Welcome to the International Church of High. And I am Pastor Fitz, spelled 420. That's pretty cringe. It's pretty, I don't know. I guess it's just cringe. But, I think a theme is important. I've tried like streaming and YouTube content creation in the past, and I've created like multiple themes as I go through each stage, but I think themes kind of help you stay focused. So I don't mind it, even if it is a little cringe. It looked like it was not taken or not being heavily used properly, and as far as I can tell, you don't need officiation to be a pastor. I had some years spent in Christianity, so felt like I was pretty sure that anyone could be a pastor, but Google AI saved me there. All right, don't mumble. Don't mumble. Get situated. So the video should be called something like I'm 30 and I failed at employment and I'm happy or something like that. So let's dive right into what we're talking about there. Um, so I'm 30. If you want to be technical, I'm 30 and a half. If you want to be darn right on the nose, I'm like 30 and three quarters. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. And for the past 16 years of my life, I've been working, employed in some form or fashion. Um, Started out working at a video game store. Tried really hard to make an impression on the owners. It wasn't like GameStop, it was this place called Play and Trade. Good times, good times. That's where I learned to love employment. um, but it was necessary back then. I felt like for me to work because home life was difficult and more money could have helped more. So I thought it was important, and I also wanted some freedom, as kids do. But I continued um, throughout high school, really working in some form or fashion. Worked at a gym, worked as a bagger at a grocery store, and worked my way all the way up to front end manager. Um, and that happened right before I left for the National Guard. So I was in the Army for a little bit. And because I went into like the intelligence side of the military, I got a clearance. And where I grew up, which was in Central Florida, there wasn't a ton of opportunity to do stuff with like a security clearance when my training was done in the National Guard. Um, and so near the tail end of my training, I was gone for like 2 years for the training for it. Um, I ended up becoming seriously involved with the girl of my dreams, who I'd also met at 14. What a pivotal year. Her name is Elena. We ended up getting married after I was done with my training. And we started popping those babies out at the ripe age of 20, 21. So life moved pretty fast there. Um, when I got back from the military, I worked at Pizza Hut for a little while. Shout out to my sister for giving me the hookup there. And then I worked at Whole Foods. Shout out to some other people for helping me get the job there. Um, Whole Foods was kind of like that was the big thing. That was gonna be the huge dream come true. Because when I was a kid, I was really into organic living and you know more of a natural diet and whatnot. As I drink my diet orange soda now, you know some things change, but some concepts stay the same. Uh, After working at Whole Foods for a little while, I realized that it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Who would have thought? Um, and I also realized like we've got a baby coming on the way, our first one, um, and so I need to figure this out. Need to figure the whole money thing out, employment. You know, I wanted my wife to be able to not have to worry about work or bringing in an income. So that meant I wanted to find a job that could support us without making her stressed out. And so I got really lucky and fortunate to get a contract opportunity. So you're like doing 1 year of work for the army, um, and it wasn't like a deployment. I got to work in Orlando, so it was like 20, 30 minutes away from where we lived at the time. And that was right around the time that I started at Chipotle. So a lot of jobs when I was a younger man. And I also realized that Chipotle wasn't all it's cracked up to be. They've got a really good sales pitch on like it's about the culture, but when your hands are like falling apart because you've got them stuck in the detergent and cleaners for like 3 hours and you can literally feel your skin melting, um, you know, culture just isn't doing a lot there, unfortunately. Anywho, so um, I worked at Chipotle for like 3 months and then eventually started on the contract. You know, it started right around the time that we actually had our first son, um, and it was awesome. Got some paternity leave because my major was super cool. Um, Shout out, you know who you are. You're definitely not watching this, hopefully. The mighty have fallen. Anyway, I was a sergeant at that point. I was in like my last 2 years of my contract, and I realized I wasn't made for the military. Surprise, surprise. Um, I should I should just say this right now. You were watching a new convert into uh, being high. Spoiler. All right, I'm going to continue telling the story, but I had to avoid any sort of drugs until this moment in my life now because um, there was no allowance for drugs when you're working federally or whatever. Um, so you're basically listening to like a new convert into cannabis. Pretend like nobody ever knew how good cannabis could be and the healing properties behind it. But now I've found the way, so let me shepherd you all. Again, pretty cringe, but you know what? We're all a little cringe. That's just the way it is. You can deny it all you want. You could say that, you know, it doesn't affect you, but we're all a little cringe. Um, Saw Wicked yesterday, the new one, Wicked for Good. I got to see it a little under the influence, so I thought it was good for that fact. I was smiling and laughing. I hadn't had that experience before watching a film, so that was good. Total weed head can't enjoy a movie without smoking. I'll have you know, I don't only smoke. Tried vegetables. Tried very good edibles, otherwise known as vegetables. They've been working. Um, let's get back on track. How about we do that? I only got to work on that contract for 1 year in the army, and there was definitely things about it that were not good. um, I learned a lot, you know, in this time from when I was 14 to when I was about 22, 23. Um, and I grew a little distasteful for just like the whole idea of work. At that point, it'd been almost 10 years since I got my first job. And I know 10 years in the workforce for a 24-year-old or close to that, that guy is truly a veteran. That guy's been through war. He knows everything. But it is what it is. That's just how I was feeling. I was getting a little stressed that the contract was coming to an end because I wanted to be able to support my family more. And that's when I finally bit the bullet, as they say, and put my resume out there with a box checked, will relocate. Went in to like this site called Clearance Jobs, which is where people that have clearances can go to get more specific job titles. I'm not going to say it's like the best. I feel like a lot of people just still use Indeed and LinkedIn, and you're probably fine doing that. But at that time, it sounded like right up my alley, you know, like it's like Christian Mingle. For those of you who are religious, imagine there was like a clearance mingle. That's what Clearance Jobs is. Sponsored by Clearance Jobs. That's what it would say there. But I'm not. Not sponsored by anybody yet. You can hit me up with non-serious offers in the comments below. So, got hired, officially joined like the real intelligence community, and it was like crazy from the get-go. Worked at, you know, one of the 3-letter agencies, and that was like my first introduction to living in, you know, this DC area. Was going to work every day and doing something like that, and the work was super serious, you know. It was full motion video stuff. If you know, you know, but it wasn't the best. Wasn't the best environment to work in for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, it's like very heavy stuff that you're dealing with, and I've always been skeptical of like exactly what any government's doing, including my own. So just being part of the, we'll call it the spear, you know, of justice, it just left me in a bad place. Like, I love this country, and I love that I get to live in it. I love the freedoms that I get, but taking life or, you know, helping make decisions that inevitably takes life is just not something that I find enjoyment out of. If you are on the right side of history and we're doing everything perfectly as we should, then I think that working in the intelligence community, or specifically what I was doing when I came up here, could be like a very righteous endeavor, you know. You're helping to enact justice on people that have wronged people on earth. But especially lately, I mean, I'm just not in the mood for being that guy. But I did it for years, man. I did that job for several years, and you know, the environment was a little toxic. I was trying to like do the best that I could. You know, I was motivated by more money for the family, because still at that time, you know, my wife was a stay-at-home mom, but she was slowly withering away in that role. So we decided towards the tail end of my time actually working like the shift work, 12-hour days, shifting between days and nights every month. Yeah, it's just bad. But we decided during that time that maybe she would want to also join the intelligence community, because she was getting a little stir crazy now at home with 2 kids. And maybe if she goes, she can get a great job right off the bat. You know, by this time I had worked there for years, and I didn't receive too many raises. But you know, towards the tail end of me working, I was super fortunate. I was making like, you know, $130,000 a year, which this is 2025. it could be sneezed at by some, but I think a lot of people would say, damn, that's really good. What are you doing making a video on YouTube and not working that? I'm getting there. Trust me, it's a great story. Aren't you having fun so far? 15 minutes in. Let's not get distracted or self-conscious about this video. I think this video is going to be a banger. I think people are going to watch this video and they're going to go, wow, what a video. What a guy. It's Trump. Anywho, so we did just that. My wife left to go into the Army Reserves to get her security clearance and training that hopefully she'd be able to find a job. Oh, I was saying, like, yeah, when she inevitably did get back, I'm just throwing spoilers all over this story. But when she got back, she was able to get a job relatively quickly, and within, probably less than a year's time, she was earning just as much as I was after working for like 10 years. Which is another reason I hate employment. Men should be able to get so much more money. It's not fair. I'm just kidding. She deserves it. You know what? Men can sometimes be pig-like, including myself. So my wife definitely deserved more money than me. She does now for sure, which is good that she earns more money than me, infinitely. I started teaching, like doing instructing work for the job instead of the job itself around the time that she left. And the two boys that we had at that time, since it was a new job and I was like wanting to stay ultra focused, my wife's mom and dad, my in-laws agreed to have the kids stay with them for a year while she was gone and I could work full time so that I could like give it my all. Not cool as a parent to make a decision like that, but it was really helpful and helpful in ways that seem much more important now. So Elena had left for about a year. The kids had left for about a year, and I moved from like our townhome, which is very similar to this one that we moved up there our first few years of living. I moved from that into like somebody's basement for that year. Saved a lot of money. Now we had 2 incomes, and I was just needing to take care of myself. So like I fully dived into giving it my all in the instructing side. It kind of started out as like a competition because only one of us from the floor were going to get our instructor title, So 2 of us were competing, and then they just decided to give it to both of us. And again, I think I had become so toxic at that point, I'll be honest and frank, that when they gave it to both of us, I was really upset because I felt like I was the better candidate, and I knew that them splitting money meant that we were making less. And it's selfish. It's selfish. It's selfish that I even felt that way back then, because the guy that I worked with, shout out to you, you know who you are. He was a really, really good guy, and he was going through a lot of similar stuff that I was in life, and in the main elephant in the room that we haven't gotten to yet, called anxiety. But he was just a good guy. He had 2 kids just like I did, and I remember thinking, like, just let this guy go. He doesn't do as much as I do, and it was selfish, man. I can see that now. My eyes have been opened. I can see. Anyway, we worked that role together for about a year, and I got super messed up in that position. I mean, our management was not great. It was very stressful. So there was a lot of problems. My wife was gone. My kids were gone. This was going not great. And around that time, while my wife and kids were gone, since I decided to be so locked in, I also decided to do college full time to earn my bachelor's. So even though the kids weren't there and a lot of the stressors in life weren't present, I was adding so much more stress on. I think that there was a lot of stress that came before even instructing, and eventually I broke. You know, my mind had always been pretty rock steady. Always felt like I was in control, um, and that's something right there that we all need to learn, that nobody's fully in control. You know, some things just happen, whether you really wanted them to, whether you prepared, whether you know, prepared against something happening and it happened anyway. Nobody's fully in control. Um, and I think for some people, like me back then, when I started to lose so much control and it just felt like so much of my life, I was a kid once. I was a kid that looked at life like it was going to be full of wonder, but all of a sudden I had found myself, you know, 25, 26 years old in positions where I hated everything that I was doing for work. I was lying to myself every day to get up and come, and I was just so jaded at the time that you're not finding any enjoyment. There's nothing. I mean, you're allowing yourself to be miserable. And nobody in my position, I'll say it like that, nobody in my position should have chosen misery, but for some reason that's what was on the schedule for me. So I started to feel very anxious, and I didn't know what that meant and what that meant for me. Because I was a bad guy. I looked at people that had anxiety and I was like, what the heck is wrong with you guys? Just stop being anxious. It's that easy, get over it, essentially. Which is so messed up. So messed up to think that way now. But sometimes you need to go through something to really understand it. And go through it, I did. I started to get real messed up. Things that I felt and attributed towards pain, tightness, all in my chest here, left side, the boobie area, the shoulder blade in the back, the shoulder in general. Did a lot of this in my time, right? Just rotating that thing, feeling so tense in there, the crackling of my bones in my shoulder. And again, a very specific feeling that I attributed to as pain happening in my chest. And so there would be nights where I would have anxiety attacks or panic attacks, which I hate to even call it now just because of what I've experienced recently, but tightness, sensation, pain, heart rate increasing. I thought I was dying. I mean, and there was a time I went to the emergency room for like 17 times in 1 month, multiple times the same day to the emergency room, thinking like, no, it's real this time. For some reason, I mean, this was 2023 at the time, I think. For some reason, emergency rooms weren't really prepared to tell me that I had anxiety. Not that it was their fault, but it's like they ran all the tests and everything kept coming back fine, which I think stressed me even more out because I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm having a heart attack. Why aren't you seeing anything? And then as soon as I would like get seated and finally be at the will of the nurses and the physician or whatever, my heart rate would go down. They would test me. They would say, oh, there's nothing wrong. And I was like, what are you talking about? I wasn't doing that, but inside, that's how I felt, On the outside, during this time, I was very like, mm-hmm. Which I guess I am now too. But like, it's more like, anyway. Thought I was dying. Saw cardiologists, had a heart monitor, Nobody was telling me I was dying, even though I knew I was, because I felt it every day. Went on for literally like 8 months. Lots of tears. Elena and the kids had come home during this time, and it just got worse once they came home because it wasn't like they were adding more stress, but it was this idea, I think, that I was stressed that I couldn't fix it before they got home. So it got even worse. Um, and on one of these fateful days, I went to an emergency room and they were like, oh, it's probably stress, man. It's probably anxiety. But we can't do anything unless we admit you. And that means like we have to keep you. We take your stuff, whatever. You wear the green gown. I was like, I don't know what's going on. If you say that, it's anxiety, then I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And Elena, she felt the same way. So they admitted me, but it was only for like a few hours because as soon as they saw me and they were like, this is probably what it is, they released me, I guess. And so they prescribed clonazepam, which is a benzodiazepine, a benzo, and a hefty dose of hydroxyzine, which is basically like, a Benadryl, a more powerful Benadryl. So I should also mention that on top of this, during the shift work, I developed a bad nicotine habit, bad tobacco habit. Dipping tobacco, even. How gross. Ew. I'm married? What the hell? Elena's great. How did she stay by my side through all of this? I'll never know. But, so that probably wasn't helping with the whole anxiety thing either. But anyway, that's what they prescribed me. I took a dose of each of those, and it was a hefty clonazepam. It was a 1 milligram dose, which now I understand that that's a lot. But you take that in addition to the hydroxyzine, you're basically on cloud nine. And as soon as I took it, the pain, sensations, everything, it went away. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I never even knew about medicine. Like, I was so natural living as a teenager that when I got sick, I was just like, just go through it. You don't want to hurt your immune system by taking medicine. So I never really felt like instant relief to any kind of thing, would be a pain or, sickness. But when I took that, I was like, wow, this works. But then I turned into a zombie within a day. And Elena was like, we cannot do this long term. Very happy that it was working, but also like, you're going to fry your brain. I was like dropping yogurt on the floor, calling her, being like, I don't know what happened. I dropped yogurt. So we went and saw a psychiatrist. I think that's the one. I think 2 days later after I initially got that original medicine, and she switched me immediately off of clonazepam onto a daily escitalopram or Lexapro, if you're more familiar with that. So an SSRI. And then like a smaller dose of hydroxyzine if you need it for anxiety purposes. So I had done that for a year at that point. Afterwards, Elena got more settled in at work. Her kids are in school now. I ended up switching from, that last instructing job, which was a train wreck. I was able to jump ship and find an instructing job for another 3-letter organization. Deals more with like satellites and stuff. And I was doing instructing for them, which was a big step up in pay. I think when I was doing my first instructing job, I was making like 95 a year. And then it bumped me up to like 120 immediately. And I lived literally 5 minutes away from my job. So a really great opportunity, change in work. Elena was working. We got the kids in daycare. Things were looking great. Dual income now. Uh, but I don't know, man. The medication mixed with, again, my jadedness with work mixed with the fact that I was going through hell the year prior. I was left with such depression and just like, what is life? Doesn't really matter. I'm broken now. The medicine was taking its toll, probably making me more depressed. But I mean, as far as I was concerned, that was my only option. Now, I had thought a lot about psychedelics, um, but never to treat this particular thing that I was going through. I didn't really understand how a drug could help with anxiety. Until now, I'm Sam. Yeah. I'm going to sell you some bullshit. Um, I just doxed myself. I said it was Fitz at the beginning of this video, and now I'm saying I'm Sam. If you made it this far, you deserved to know my first name. But for everybody else, remember it's Pastor Fitz. 420. Cringe. Here we go. All right, back on track. Yeah, so, the idea of recreationally using drugs one day sounded great. I always used to tell people when I was in an instructor position and the topic of drugs would come up, I would say, I've never had a drug past, but I have a drug future. And I took that very seriously my entire time in the intelligence community. No drug usage. Didn't lie about it to get in. Like I said, I was a very Christian boy in my teenage years. Um, so, yeah. This medicine that I was taking was the only answer that I felt. But left me so down, and it left me so kind of depressed and zombified. And it didn't just depress the mood that I had, it depressed like the function of my brain, it felt like, too, to where it just wasn't firing as much. I was getting less enjoyment out of things. I was irritable as all hell, and I was still using tobacco during this time, so I was a mess. What can I say? I was a bloody mess. What do you want from me? Uh, Everything was going bad. It made work more frustrating and annoying, and anything would irritate me. And I felt, particularly at the time, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm dead wrong in this, but at the time I had a manager who would like talk to me for hours on end every day. Like he would come into my office and talk to me, but it was more of like a talking at me, which again, no ill will towards him. At least these days, I was a bad guy. I had ill will. I don't anymore. We're all just trying to get through this, and not a lot of us have the luxury to be able to get high. But it made me upset going in every day and having that be my daily grind. The instructing was fine. I could do that. I always kind of looked at the intelligence community as a joke because it doesn't take a lot of work in order to stay employed. Getting the employment and staying employed or employable is much harder. And then once you get a job, you can basically just coast, which is another thing that I didn't like about employment. Sidetrack. Anyway, I was just not happy. Got the opportunity to change jobs from the instructor at the site to actually doing remote work, full-time remote. Same amount of money too, which was a big selling point for me at the time. And it wasn't even instructing. I was just like, I was a guy helping the Air Force with their bigger transport planes, and not even having to do like engineering, but more so just helping them with their training programs since I had instructing experience. Um, didn't feel that qualified, I'll be honest, but defense contracting is a little interesting in that way. You don't have to be really the guy or gal for 90% of the jobs. They really just need somebody in a seat because the companies, at the end of the day, they provide somebody to answer the government's need, and then the government gives them a big fat check, and then they cut that check in half and give it to the employee, keep the other half for whatever they need. And hopefully some of that ends up as profit. So says the company. Me, I could care less. You know, maybe you lose money getting me. That'd be a win-win for me. Down with the establishment. I had my pinky out there for a little bit. It's like I want to say down with the establishment, but I'm still part of it. Me, when I'm a revolutionary leader who happens to be wealthy and came from a wealthy family. 36 minutes in, huh? Whoa! Here we go. Am I even halfway done explaining this? Hopefully. My thumbnail should be like a can of Skull with dipping tobacco. See. Good news, by the way. This thing's been beaten. This is an empty can. But this can is from like 5 days ago. I started my weed journey 4 days ago. I haven't even dipped in 2 days. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I was doing this remote work. I was getting to travel around. I still wasn't happy. I had to up my dosage and some of the medication. Had a few episodes of big panic attacks where they let me get more clonazepam. And I worked this one position for a year thinking that I should be as happy as could be in a position where I basically had to do next to nothing and just clock in every day for the most part. And I was getting paid more than the national average. And it just goes to show your mindset has a big effect on your overall enjoyment in life, because there were better, that was a better life to be living. The best out of all the employment that I've ever had, and still I was absolutely miserable. And it's a real shame. I feel bad for myself. That's kind of weird to say, but I feel really sad that myself went through what it did, but I'm glad that we're here now. That contract only lasted for like a year, and then in my last position that ended just a few months ago was a cyber position, because I had finished my bachelor's in business and then decided to get my MBA, my master's in business administration, and I decided to do it with a focus on IT program management. My wife went into IT in the intelligence community, and it definitely seemed to be the better choice than to do human intelligence like I did. Just as it gives you more more of a foot into like a higher paying position. And you don't even need college for a lot of it. Like, my wife got her bachelor's recently, but when she started with her company, all they were really looking for was an A+ certification from CompTIA. And she was able to get that after some good amounts of studying. She's not really a techie kind of person, but she's killing it now. And that just goes to show that, like, in this job field, I can't say enough good things about it, despite it not being for me at all. I mean, the barrier to entry is is lower than what it may seem. I think it's a great thing to do when you're young, so you can compound some of the opportunity and also the higher pay that you might make earlier in life. Um, I don't like, capitalism, but you got to play by some of those rules in order to survive, I guess. So, yeah, you can get a good retirement account going early on and all that good stuff. We've gotten people jobs in this field and their lives seem better because of it, hopefully. If you know, you're watching, you're like, lies. That guy fucking sucks. He sold me a lie. Um, write to me below. Anyway, um, yeah. So I I was doing the remote work for cyber. Let me tell you what rock bottom looks like. I had a job because the last contract ended. I needed a contract. They were nice enough to hire me despite my lack of experience in cyber in general, on the pretense that I interviewed really well and I seemed like I had a good head on my shoulders, which sucks. I sold them a lie. I did not have a good head on my shoulders at that time. I was pretty bankrupt in the mental department. Um, so I was working on InDoc in this position, and they told me they'd send me a meeting invite because other people had started around the same time that I did in this role, so that we can finish InDoc and I can get situated within the team. I responded. I said, "Great, can't wait for the invite." And then I never got an invite, and I had done everything that I needed to do for my InDoc. So I was like, "Ooh, do I reach out to somebody and say it again?" Because like I had already responded last. I'm not gonna make excuses now. I'm just gonna be completely honest about everything. Um, at that point in my life, I was so jaded when it came to working that I was like, you know, I can keep myself busy and I can get better in my knowledge at the job and whatnot and feel like I'm offering a good service. If they want to keep me on retainer, then they can go ahead and, bring me on when they feel ready to bring me on, right? So I was doing what I felt was, 8 hours of work at the time. Maybe I was learning more about the tool that I was going to be working on. Maybe I was working on the rest of my college to finish out my MBA. Maybe I was, doing certification prep because I got my Security Plus certification at that time. But I was like, I'm going to sign my time card. And if they have a problem, then they just won't sign it on their end. And then bada bing, bada boom, we can come to, an agreement later on. So like, I don't know, my depression and my anxiety, not that I want to blame anything. I can accept all of this now. Um, and so just got to be honest about the situation. But yeah, probably wasn't doing 8 hours of work, and I was still getting paid. And again, like, what crazy position to be in life. We were essentially getting paid, around 130, I think, at that time, to stay at home and not be bothered by anybody and not have to deliver something. Like, it doesn't mean that you're not working, but you're definitely not, you know, selling something for the company at that time other than keeping a seat warm. Um, so yeah, I did that for months. I think it was like 3 months. April of this year. Yeah, it started in April and it went to like July. I think the end of June, I got an email from my manager being like, "What is going on?" So 3 months of just being a complete piece of shit, I guess. Um, and the email did come. The "what is going on" did come. Uh, and I told them exactly what had went down. I showed them what I worked on. I gathered like my evidence of how I was staying prepared, staying on top of what I needed to stay on top of per the position. But I knew, I mean, there was once enough eyeballs were on it, because I guess what had happened was um, I wasn't using my company issued laptop to do anything on, and so they had like done an audit, and it was like, this guy hasn't turned his laptop on for 3 months. Which I didn't even use my company laptop for the position I was in prior. And again, what an ass. Don't you know you're supposed to only do work on company PCs or whatever? Not really. I wasn't really thinking of it at the time. So no, I didn't know, and maybe I'm stupid for it. But um, yeah, so they fired me and my manager. And I'm sorry to the manager that had to put up with my bullshit, because that shouldn't have been on your plate. And I told myself, and I allowed myself to believe that like you're just as culpable as I am in all this, so whatever. But that's not the way that I should look at that, because we all have to be responsible for ourselves. Um, but I think we should still be good to one another too. I think there's like a moral obligation for me now, to be kind and to be good. But I wasn't good then. Um, I got let go at the beginning of September. And I mean, I'm so mentally just dead at this time in my life anyway that Elena was already like, listen, if you just want to take some time. I mean, she was so supportive. Still is. She's still around. She's right. No, I'm just kidding. She's at work. The one of us that is. Um, so supportive. She's like, hey, take some time. Maybe being a stay-at-home is like what you need to figure out life. So I was living stay-at-home life for the last 2 or 3 months. And in that time, I was having panic attacks and needing to up my dosage in medicine. And man, it seemed really bleak. It got really, really bleak. Because it's like inevitably, what does this mean? Am I going to eventually fade into black, just taking more and more of this medication to where I feel like nothing is good? Nothing is true anymore. Good and true. Shout out to Liver King. Hope you're doing at least not imprisoned. I hope you're doing not imprisoned. Yeah. But lately, I felt this month in particular, Elena had just turned 30. She's giving me an opportunity of a lifetime, I feel like, for healing. And, I just have this mentality where I hate letting the ones that I love down. And it was bringing me down to know that, like, I wasn't seemingly getting better. I was still taking medication, and then I was thinking even more about, like, getting back to trying out benzodiazepines. Like, I tell you, I only took like 3 of them at the beginning, 2 or 3, and I could tell how like addicting they were, just because the day that I didn't take one, I felt like my body was like, oh, come on, it was angry at me. So I was kind of scared of ever getting back on those either. But I started to take like a point 0.5, I think, a half a gram dosage. Is that right? A half a milligram. Did I say a half a gram? I would have just died. Anyway, uh, yeah. So I was like, what is this all gonna look like? Like, it doesn't seem like this is gonna get me better. And I should say that like working out has helped anxiety, but nothing really was able to keep the bay doors closed when the panic started setting in. You remember what I was talking about earlier, the tightness, the pain, the sensations, I should say. So I said, you know what? Let's try as much as I can. That I felt like was good for me. I'm gonna be honest, and it's probably for me, and I know it's for many, but I just sometimes believe might be for the many, but not for me. I think therapy, talk therapy. Um, I'm sorry, I don't remember all the names of it, but the therapy where you're talking to somebody is extremely beneficial. I just haven't tried it yet. I'm doing it right now. Look how many people I'm talking to. 12 million? Guy can dream. I got my certification to use medical cannabis 5 days ago. And I tried an edible. And I left a part of this story out that while I was still in the IC, closer to the end there, I had done this already. I had gotten my certification, and then I had consumed like an edible. Um, then, and I just immediately had what I felt like was a panic attack and was like, well, this isn't for me. So, if you want to get technical, I was already being a bad boy close to the end there. During my time in the IC, I don't think I'm going back. Let's be honest. Um, but I was like, well, tried it, one and done. I did it all wrong, I'll be honest. And I accepted it all wrong because, this experience that I had um, in getting back and being grounded in my life now had a lot to do with what kind of mood I was in at this time here and now, to say like I am ready to ride this ride to wherever it takes me, and please make it take me somewhere nice. I guess we'll just talk about that now. I tried an edible. I felt the panic sensations this time around. And instead of it being a panic of like pain, it was like, ooh, I know this is just panic setting in. And like, because I know that, I can deal with it this time. Like, that was the mindset change on the edible. And I was like, whoa. You're meaning to tell me my brain now has the ability in this current state of mind that I'm in to recognize what that is and just say, it's okay. We'll get through this. And then I tried to vape like 3 days ago. And I had my first trip. And I tell you, the trip was, it depends on the attitude, right? If I didn't know what a panic attack felt like, and that was my first time trying any kind of drug, I would have said, I almost died on that. I'm never trying that again. Because I know what my panic attacks had felt like, that trip was like 1,000 panic attacks, one after the other, for like what felt like an hour straight. But it took every sensation that would have been a panic attack in those thousands of instances happening. And as soon as a feeling of pain, stress, whatever would set in, the mind immediately sent it somewhere else. Like, oh, I'm getting the feeling again. And then my mind would just be like, dance, move it out. It's okay. It's going through your body. At one point, I was like fishing the negative energy out of my mouth. I mean, there were so many things going on. And yes, in addition, I was seeing flowers and light shows and fireworks. I'm not going to lie, okay? The stereotype is real. It was amazing. I'm totally a hippie now. It was fantastic. I mean, it was the best feeling that I felt in years. And immediately I was like, I am getting myself back. It's me coming back, you know, the talkative, happy guy that is chill. Um, I can have conversations with my kids now. Before, I was a bad guy. Before, I mean, anybody that knows me can tell you, like, I was an anti-kid activist, even though I had two kids. I would tell anybody not to have kids, and I would get so frustrated so easily with my kids. And I loved them. I loved them then. I think I love them a lot better now. I'm not going to say I love them more now, but the love that I express for my kids has never been better. I get annoyed with them. My temper was really, well, or my fuse was really short in terms of how much I could tolerate, whether it was like what I perceived as whining or them just like overloading me with information in quick succession. Just kids being kids, you know, at the end of the day. But now I'm having full-fledged conversation with them for hours. You know, we played Fortnite this weekend for like 3 hours. And usually after 5 minutes of playing with them, I'm ready to be like, ugh. But this time I talked with them for 3 hours and we were vibing. I mean, it's changed a lot. I don't know if it's because of a dry mouth or if there's just more healing going on, but I haven't dipped in, like I said, 4 days. And I'm not wanting to, which is a huge change. I haven't needed any hydroxyzine. I certainly haven't needed any clonazepam. Now, what I feel like happened during that first trip on the vape there, what I feel like happened was I battled serious demons that were inside of me for years. And now I actually I want to seek out the feeling again of like bring that panic back because I'm not done with it yet. Like the panic is now scared of me. The panic is like, when is Sam coming around? Pastor Fitz, FTZ, spelled 420. Also known as Sam. It's okay. I don't mind if you know. Just make sure you just share it with your friends. Anywho, listen, here's what I'm saying. We've been going at it for almost an hour. Let's try to finish this by 60 minutes flat. Once again, I'm 30 years old. I'm unemployed. And I'm happy. I'm not saying this is where you want to be, where you want to find yourself. I know that there's going to be a lot of potential flack that this video gets, that I get specifically, because even in an hour, you can't explain everything to everybody. So I'm not going to look at anybody negatively that might say something negative about me or this video. And I wish everybody love and peace and happiness. And I'm setting this place to be like a church. You know, I thought about why church was so great last night when I was lying in bed, and I said, it's because it's a place where a lot of people that feel the same way can go to. And that's usually something that makes me happy. And I want this place to be a place where we have similar beliefs, and that being high can heal. And if you want to hang out with somebody that likes to play video games, and talk while they are probably high, this is the place for you. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.